What's up, family? This week I have the pleasure of introducing you to E.W. Brooks. For those that don't know, E.W. is the originator of the Mafietta movement. Among the numerous hats she wears are mother, wife, author, activist, businesswoman, and producer. And we're sure that you're going to love her as much as we do. Once you listen to the conversation, head on over to her website, www.mafietta.com, and check out more on EW. So without any further delay, let's get to it. I guess let's start at the beginning. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What led you to this being an author?
Okay. Um, I am from North Carolina. Um,
Hmm.
I come from a family of educators. My grandparents were teachers. My aunt's a principal. My uncle was a superintendent. And the natural progression was, okay, we know you're going to teach. But when I chose a different path, the ears kind of went up, and people were like, "What are you doing?" Um, but throughout that, I went into management. I started to do a lot of volunteer work. Um, I joined an organization called the Order of the Eastern Star, and I did quite a bit of like boots on the ground work in urban communities. Um, we started a scholarship program, did a number of things, but in working with the youth, I began to form relationships with their parents. And in doing that, I was dealing with a lot of single mothers who had never been outside the city of Wilmington, North Carolina. And that really pained me because I understood that they were accepting things that they probably shouldn't accept, dealing with situations that they could probably improve with the right guidance, and it just crushed me. So from that point, I decided to start a movement, but in the beginning, I'm like, how do I do this? Because you can't go say, hey, listen, I want to tell you something that's going to help you, because that's not always received well. So I wrote my first book, Mafietta, and if you read the first 4 to 5 pages, you're going to be like, what in the world? You know what I mean? Because they're going to curse, they're going to say some stuff you're probably not expecting. But when I wrote my first novel, I had a very specific audience in mind. Um, so if you continue to read the series from book 1 to book 3, you'll not only see less cursing in book 3, you'll see better moves. So you see how this woman meets a guy who's on the wrong side of the law, but you'll see how her love for him and God changed his whole path and the path of everybody around them. So she helped them move from something, underworld style to something legit that they could leave to their family. So you're going to see Mafietta evolve from something called Mafietta to something called legacy, because it was always about building something that their children could stand on and be proud of. So the whole Mafietta and the whole Mafietta movement was my way of reaching this particular audience and saying, I don't care where you start. I don't care where you've been. None of that matters. It only matters what you do right now and how you finish. So that's what the movement is about.
I absolutely love that. I think you have to reach people where they are before you can tell them or even help them figure out where they need to be.
Exactly.
So who were your inspirations in even starting to write? Because it's a big step. There are a lot of people out there with the idea for a story or thought, but they never get past that idea stage. They never get out of the starting blocks.
And that was hard for me because, believe it or not, I wrote the first 10 to 15 pages of Mafietta in 2010. And it was funny because I started writing for a blog, and I was writing for Monique Coleman from High School Musical. She had a blog, and I was doing a lot of writing for her. And then one day it was like, wait a minute. You know you can do this for yourself, right? The light came on. So I sat down and began to write, and when I started writing, I realized, wait a minute, this is the same thing you started a couple years ago. So that's when I realized it was something that I couldn't put down. And from that point, there were a lot of nights I stayed up late. There were a lot of mornings I was up early, and I worked to a point that, like when I first started Mafietta, it didn't make a lot of money. You know what I mean? So I wrote the first book, I wrote the second book, and I'm not making a lot of money. And my mom and my family is looking at me like, "Are you crazy? Like, why are you putting so much energy? Why are you putting so much time into this?" But I couldn't explain to them that I had seen the end before I started. I was that focused.
Tell me a little bit about the response that you got from where you started to now, and has it been positive, negative? What have you seen?
Okay. Well, I've kind of had both responses. Because in the beginning, I was very clear about my audience. However, because of my community involvement and, because my faith is so, I have a strong spiritual background. So when a lot of these people read Mafietta for the first time, because they didn't understand the mission or the context, they were like, what in the world? So it took a moment for the idea to catch. So I had to kind of build a campaign around that explained that this was a way to empower women ultimately. Because I came from a town with 2 stoplights. You know what I mean? Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's grandma knows everybody. And, everybody kind of, has respect for each other, act like they got some sense. So, going to a bigger city where they didn't have this village mentality was different for me, and it wasn't something that they understood initially. So the response was mixed, but once I was I was able to project my mission and my goals for my brand, I can say that some of those same people are some of my biggest supporters now.
Did you have a problem or any struggles with kind of crafting the message coming from such a biblical background?
No, and I didn't, because not the drug selling and all of that. That's just an exaggerated situation for a novel. But, as far as being in abusive relationships, dating the wrong guy, I've done all of that. So it was in my heart to reach that audience. Okay. And to do that, if I had to use the wordy word, or if I had to say something that would make the situation real to them, that to me was more important than who may have been offended. Because it was just like I sat down with, and I actually sat down and spoke to my pastor. And I'm like, if you can tell me that Jonah went to Nineveh speaking the King's English instead of saying, yo, dude, like, God is telling me to tell you this and something's about to happen. You know what I mean? So when I broke it down that way, he was like, you know what? I hear you. You know what I mean? And from that point, because I was so directed in my mission, that was like the last check in the box that I needed after my grandmother to keep going. So from that point, it's been full steam ahead. My early challenges were branding, actually. Because when I put out my first book in 2013, I knew what my mission was, I knew what my vision was, and I'm like, I got this book out here, and everybody's going to run and buy it. But, after a little time and not reaching the sales that I needed, I understood the importance of like strategic alignment, and I reached out to Blake Carrington. He has a independent publishing company where they do a lot of urban fiction. From there, I got connected with Omar Tyree, who's a great mentor now. He and Blake are terrific mentors. And I really had a lot of respect for Omar Tyree because when I was young, one of the first urban books I read was Fly Girl. And I'm like, wow, people write books about stuff that's really happening, and that was my mentality then. So to meet him at this stage of the game, and have him mentor me and guide me was like an amazing feat for me. And it was also a way to, it was like God doing a head nod saying, okay, you're lined up, keep moving. Because there were points, of course, during the journey where I was like, Lord, like, I'm spending money, it's not coming back, what's happening here? But whenever I was at the point that I was ready to say, forget it, something would always align. I met the Tankerts, and we did some sponsorship on Ticket and Water last year. We went through that process. I made a lot of valuable relationships from there. From that point, I went on. I was able to go to Atlanta, have a meeting with Candy Burris through one of her empowerment seminars. We just had a conference call last week. So just to have the right people like, Jack Kemp, Omar, Blake, to have all of those people guide me, or just to offer pearls or, gems of information that would help me get to the next step was paramount for me. That prepared me, that and watching Shark Tank, I got to say that, prepared me for the meeting with Damon Dash. His question was, what is your business and how can I help you? And because of all of the bumps in the road and the bruises, and because of all of those things, I was able to hone my brand to something very specific and something that I could articulate very quickly. So because of that, I think that was one of the things that sold him. I had my books ready, my script was ready. So that whole 2 years when I was, frustrated and, still pushing forward, like I said, my family was like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? You know what I mean? But I had to keep pushing, and then that's when it all made sense. It all made sense for me the whole time, but that's when the light came on for my family. And in making my movie, they became investors because, we spent a great deal more money than we anticipated initially, but because I knew that things were aligning. I went in with maybe $15,000. I ended up spending $46,000, and I didn't have to step outside of my family. So it was a blessing. Mind you, this is from the same family that was saying, are you sure that's what you want to do? Maybe you should write another kind of book. You know what I mean? So it was just evidence of divine alignment, what faith and work mean when they meet. So I'm just a testament of what faith and hard work can do, and I can't wait to see the greater that's coming.
Now, I saw on the website that you actually do something a little special with the proceeds from each book. How did that come about?
Because I am an Army wife first. I'm a wife first. I just happen to be an Army wife. So in doing that, you may go to a city and get there in January, and then for whatever reason, your husband may be gone, deployed here or there or sent to school the very next month, and you may be in a city where you haven't learned to navigate, where you haven't made relationships yet, and you may have to do that without the aid of, or the protection of your husband. So it made me want to reach out to women who are dealing with that kind of thing. And in doing that, yes, I do donate a portion of the proceeds from my sales, because when we go to each installation, and I haven't started here at Fort Lee, but I always form a group of Army wives, and we always sit down, talk about our issues, ways to support each other through the process, whether it's, giving somebody a ride or watching their child so they can do whatever they need to do. It was a way to form a support system for those who may not have it. And let me be completely clear, the Army has all types of support groups and things like that. But this was just something I did that was a little more personal for me.
Family seems like a important thing in your life. How do you maintain the work-life balance? How do you maintain the creativity while also being mom, wife, household manager?
I sleep about 3-4 hours a night. That's the only way, because with a small child, during the day he demands a lot of my attention, and it's important to me that he has the proper foundation. So my son is 2 years old, but he can read sight words. He's talking. I'm a firm believer in that hooked on phonics. There are a lot of resources on YouTube that I don't think some, young mothers may be aware of that teaches alphabets and things like that. So the alphabet and things like that. So during the day, I try to devote the bulk of my time to him. I may take, some phone calls as I have to, but after 5 o'clock when my husband comes home, I'm able to kind of transition. So normally from about 5 to 8, because now I'm working on my master's. I just finished my bachelor's in June, and I started my master's in July. So from about 5 to 8, it's always schoolwork. And then when the house gets quiet and everybody goes to bed, between about 10 and, 2 or 3, that's my time. That's when the creativity kicks in. That's when the house is quiet. So I don't sleep much, but I walk my husband to the door every morning. We pray and have our breakfast every morning, whether we pick it up or I cook it, and we do the same at dinner. So it's important to me to be a wife, because what is all of this for if your family's not supported? I didn't want to be the person that looks back 20 years later, and my child is like, but you have the money and you never spent time with me. So I agree that work-life balance is important, but I have a very stringent schedule, and I just have to stick to it.
Let's backtrack just a tad bit. How do you go from being an author to having your words produced visually, if you will, to having a TV movie?
Okay, so one of my Masonic brothers reached out to a friend of his who had done some work at BT, studied film at Howard. She read Mafietta, she liked it, and she worked really fast. Like, she literally had transformed my book into a script within 2 weeks. She's bad.
Once you had the script, what was the process of shopping it around? Did you have contacts, or you just kind of hit the streets?
Okay, so I hit the streets, and I had a few contacts that work in production. I have a friend of the family who's an entertainment attorney, and he gave me a lot of pointers early. So, of course, like, when you're out here, it's hard to pitch because you have to have an agent, or you have to have a production company that has sold something already. So, like, when you're trying to get out and do this thing indie, unless you just have the money to put something on YouTube and wait till it catches, it's a little hard. So that's what I found. Like, unless you have an agent or you sold something, it's not really easy to get through some of those doors. So that was another reason that I was so glad to come across Damon, because just by him coming on to direct the pilot episode, I learned so much. And I think, that was an invaluable lesson. It's an invaluable relationship. And now I think we have the tools in place to pitch, but it's not something that you can do overnight because they make it a little hard for the indie filmmaker to get on.
Now, who's starring in the series?
Okay, so in the pilot episode, we have Delicious, a.k.a. London Charles, starring as Clark. We have Murder Moose, the battle rapper, starring as her love interest, Carol. And we found this budding actress named Stadia McCrary from Philly. Like, she literally drove from Philadelphia to North Carolina for the audition, got the part, drove back the same night, and she had just been a gem. Like, I can't wait for you guys to see her. She was amazing. So, yes, and I was pleasantly surprised. Like, I didn't really know that London was into acting. And Damon was like, yeah, we're going to use Delicious. And I'm like, are you sure? But I have to say, that was one time I'm glad that I listened to Damon, because she really killed the part. She brought emotion, to the role, and I was very happy. Very happy.
So is this something that looks like it'll be in your future? Have you caught the directing bug, the production bug?
I have caught the production bug. Now I have found my passion. I have found what I want to do. But in the meantime, I do plan to continue writing, because it's not cheap to make a movie. Like, we filmed for 3 days, and between filming and editing, and we're not quite done yet, that was like $46,000. So you have to make sure that you're ready to take that leap of faith, and that you're financially prepared. Otherwise, you can end up in a mess. So, I can't wait to get Mafietta moved and sold so I can go to the next project, because I definitely have the book. I just have to do it in a way that's financially feasible for both myself and my family.
With that in mind, what's next? Do you think there'll be other series past the Mafietta legacy? Do you think there'll be other movies based on that?
What I would love to do is I would love to have, of course, I want to sell Mafietta as a series,
But I would love to have legacy go somewhere like, and I'm speaking life right now, but I would love to have legacy go somewhere like OWN or to catch the eyes of someone like Tyler Perry, because it's really written like a soap opera, because there's so many lives that are intertwined. So I would really just like to see the Mafietta Legacy franchise grow. And I have another series called Envy and Eye Candy, which is about black women and self-image. And it just deals with some real situations there. And I'd like to see that develop as well. So everything that I write in some way empowers women. And I would love to see on film. When I write for TV. I write seeing it already playing in my mind. So, I hope that everything I write can end up on TV. That's the goal. That is the goal.